So, you talked a lot about learning, Phil. So, what's currently on your nightstand?
Well, actually, I've been my most recent book has been a book called The Starbucks Experience, and the reason why I picked that up is because I've always been intrigued from a business perspective how to create and hold a really I call it a space, but really how to create an environment is what Starbucks, no matter where you go except for the airport because they're forced to use a certain employee. Every Starbucks I go into is the same experience, same smell, same touch, same feel. Everything is the same, and it's the same experience. You feel greeted, you feel warm, you feel loved. And I really, what intrigued me about reading this book was that I wanted to understand the context. What was this? What were these leaders thinking of when they decided they were going to go radical? They don't call their employees employees. They're called partners. They have their innovation is part of their environment. Anybody can innovate and come up with ideas and implement them. I mean that's part of it. They're not brought back to that. So for me, I was looking at that as how do I take that concept and implement it into my own life, into my own business. That's been the most recent. Prior to that, actually, because we just did that. I reread Real Estate Advantages right before that because we just did this 2-day book study in November that Robert led that we were just talking about earlier.
What's on the horizon for the Rich Dad Company?
Now, big question. We actually are in the process of a couple different. We have actually three big initiatives right now. Number one is our Rich Dad Education Initiative. One of the biggest complaints we get from people is, wow, you've told me why I need to become an investor, but you haven't taught me how. And so we've actually created a joint venture with an organization that can deliver seminar training, both in person and online, specific curriculum, much like the panel you were talking about for 2 Thursdays from now event, which is lease options, foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, and so 3 days specific how-to training in all those elements. So that's Rich Dad Education. We just launched that this past quarter. The other piece we've got going on right now is we're launching a trial right now is our Rich Dad franchise, and because with the legal requirements, there's not much I can really talk about with it because we're still in the process of going through and getting our UFOC put together. But it's really designed to help people build a business model around teaching others the Rich Dad concepts. And then the third thing is the Rich Dad TV show. And a month ago we taped Robert. We did a 13-week series. It's a 30-minute series of Robert teaching, and we're going to be launching that in March. Still to be determined how it gets launched, but it's already in the can being edited, and that's a really big initiative for us as well. So those three things are our primary pushes for 2007.
Okay. And also, again, for audience members, if there's any questions that I'm not asking that you'd really like to hear from Phil as we kind of get toward the end of these questions here, please email them to info@investorteams.com. Info@investorteams.com. I want to get into a little bit more detail. Most of our folks out there on the phone are interested in real estate and getting started. Mm-hmm. So, talk a little bit about finding properties. What would Rich Dad and you advise them to do in terms of finding properties?
Well, the first and foremost, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but it comes down to your team. I mean, the best real estate deals you're not going to find on MLS. I mean, the best opportunities you're going to find through knowing the right person who knows the deals out there. You can get it before it goes on the market. That's where the money's made. I mean, in the cash flow game, it's the fast track. I mean, it really is. It's the fast track kind of deals where your opportunities are is where there are no opportunities to the average eye. And the way you find those is truly through investors. I mean, when you get into more specifics, we were talking earlier about the Detroit market compared to the Phoenix market in real estate. And Phoenix, has had one of the greatest booms. I mean, it was one of the top appreciating states over the last 2 years, where Detroit, Michigan wasn't.
Yes, it wasn't.
And we talked about kind of what some of the differences were. And then obviously you talk about demographics, where population is increasing still in Phoenix versus potentially decreasing in the Detroit area. You talk about how but there's always pockets. And the thing is that when you really study and know a market, you'll be able to start seeing what that next opportunity is. So where a year ago in Phoenix you could buy, actually a year and a half ago, you could buy anything and it would appreciate. Today you have to be a much smarter investor. So at what I'm looking at and what we talk about here is looking at what are the new strategies. Well, flipping probably isn't the right strategy with the appreciation going today. In fact, we don't necessarily recommend flipping because if you think about that from an E, S, B, or I standpoint, the quadrant, you're taxed in that E and that S side. So you don't have the same advantages when you flip. But that was just a side comment. But if you start looking now at lease options, where you may be able to actually get into a property that starts to cash flow, pre-foreclosures, huge opportunities where you can go in, you can help a family that's in need, and you could go into those types of opportunities. So as looking into new markets, those are the types of things in the Phoenix market that I know that our team looks at here, and that will change. Each market bears a different opportunity, and as an investor, it's our responsibility to be able to take any deal and figure out how to make money at it.
That's right.
It may not be a flip, but maybe it's a wholesale where you're able to find somebody that wants to be part of it. Any of those pieces are really important.
That's great. Yeah, and again, talking about pre-foreclosures, just as an action item for our audience out there, is go to seminars. They're all around you.
Yeah.
The one in Michigan, I didn't mention the date because I couldn't see it at the time, but that's the 21st, I think, which is that Thursday in Michigan. But there's plenty of people out there who can help you find pre-foreclosures, not only in Michigan but all over the country. I know foreclosures are extremely high in Florida and Arizona and some of the other markets out there. And you heard Kendra Todd talk last month about some of the hot markets in the Carolinas and such. So plenty of opportunity to get out there and start doing these investments and getting out there and start buying properties. So again, just a couple other questions in terms of your advice. You buy for cash flow. Is that correct?
Yeah,
does that sound right?
that is correct. And because for me, I would flip only in certain situations if that's the only opportunity and it's a great deal. And we're not saying don't flip, but when you look at cash flow, we always call flipping the greater full theory, and that is that you're hoping there's a greater full at the other end at the sale, and that you aren't the greatest full there. Right. And because if you find a property that cash flows, you're making money whether it appreciates or not. And that's really the piece. When people bet on appreciation, they're gambling. And for Rich Dad, we really teach the concept of cash flow, because with cash flow and appreciation, well, you can refinance, take that appreciation out, and it may change your cash flow, by the way, so you obviously have to pay attention to your financing. But you look at that, you can take that money out and you can roll it into another property, so you can use it to start building wealth, and with keeping that property at the same time. And we talked about that example that Robert did with the 10 condo units to 1,150 units. That type of process is really why we talk about cash flow. Each of those properties cash flow. If it doesn't cash flow, it doesn't make sense. Now the question is, how can you make properties cash flow? Right? Well, I mean, obviously you can. It's numbers. It's the rents in the area. So you always want to know what your rents are. And so if you're going into an area, you must know what the comps are. You must know. What is the room there? Can you adjust it? What is the financing opportunities? That's why having the right mortgage broker on your team is so critically important, because if you can figure out what your debt service is going to be, you can evaluate a property within 30 seconds to see if it's going to cash flow or not, from a general perspective. Obviously, you get into your due diligence, and you have you get into deferred maintenance. You have to adjust all those types of pieces. You get into any HOAs, whatever that may be. There's obviously a lot more to go into it. But from a rudimentary look, understanding those things ahead of time allows you to be in position. But still, going back to it, if you find a team member, a realtor that understands cash flowing properties, and they bring you cash flowing properties, you're going to be in a very different situation than if you go to somebody who just knows how to sell and is looking for their next commission. It's a very, very different experience.
Absolutely.